I'm just a fan, and I'm here today to talk about an Incredibles movie called The Incredible. Wait a minute. Strike that. Reverse it. Thank you. The Incredibles is so much fun to watch. I think this is one of the best superhero movies I've ever seen in my life. And it gets some extra bonus points from me just because the guy who directed and wrote the movies actually went to the same high school that I went to. So if you're from my town and you know the schools and everything, if you watch The Incredibles closely and pay attention to school names or mascots, you might realize, oh, I know that. That's from my town. I know that. It's super cool. So that itself doesn't make the movie super great, even though it is a fun fact and a fun, exciting thing for me. But the movie does hold up very well on its own and with its own merits. With just a month or a month and a half away until Incredibles 2, again, after 14 years, we finally have the sequel coming out, and I figured that was my cue to talk about Incredibles 1, or just The Incredibles, whether it has a 1 next to it or not, and how excited I may or may not be for Incredibles 2 here soon. And this is going to be just a spoiler review or a spoiler discussion to me, because I'm guessing most of us, if we're going to watch this review, have seen Incredibles 1. I mean, you had 14 years, come on. And it's less about that movie and what the full effect it had on people is, because we know that by now, and it's more about how we're jumping off from Incredibles 1 and how we feel about that to this new Incredibles 2 movie coming out. So I do apologize if you wanted a review on The Incredibles without spoilers, but it's going to be spoiled. The most confident good thing I have to say about The Incredibles, and I have a lot to say, but I guess I would say my favorite part about the movie is how it captures so well the essence of being a superhero and of superheroes living in society. It does such a great job from the first scene to the last scenes where you have these characters who have superpowers, and they don't explain how they have them, they don't get into detail about genetics or whatever, and that's great. I'm glad we just can forget that stuff and enjoy the aspects that we have superheroes for. But it's so fun just watching them talk about how every superhero has a secret identity and, you know, how it feels, how the world gets back into danger 10 minutes later after you save the whole thing. Just, I feel like the maid. You know, those kinds of scenes right there. Just right off the bat, it's just fun. It's so much fun to watch. And it's, I don't know if I would say it's a fresh take on superhero movies, but back in 2004, it was just a unique way to do it. It was Pixar Disney animation having this awesome way to just represent the concept of superheroes living in society. One of the other main things that comes to mind about how great this movie is the cleverness and the clever setup of characters. I can't think of a single main or even semi-main character in this movie who just isn't awesome. I mean, we know who they all are at the beginning. It's obvious to tell who Dash is. That's his name in the English version, right? He's Flash in the German version. But you got Dash, we know who he is and who he wants to be. We have Violet, and it's a little basic, but, you know, she's boy crazy at the moment, which I guess is her character at the beginning. But then you have Mr. Incredible. He wants to relive the glory days type of thing, but he can't. You know, he's stuck in that office, stuck in that mindset, stuck in society, for what society has set up for him. And then Helen, or Elastigirl, whatever you want to call her, she's the one who's trying to move past all that with him and focus on just having a family, and let's just, you know, be the best family we can be, given the circumstances. And that's great. We know exactly who they are, and by the end of the movie, we know exactly where they go. You know, we know things about Dash now. We know a little bit more about Violet. We know more about Mr. Incredible and how he's changed, and of course Elastigirl, or Helen. I mean, you know, she's more accepting of the whole thing. I mean, it just does little things. There's lots of little things in this movie that really tie it together, and this is just the set of main 4 characters. But near the end, when Syndrome's blimp ship, Zeppelin, whatever it is, crashes down on top of the Incredible family, and Violet, you know, has her shield thing up, and then Helen says, "That's my girl." That right there, I mean, the absolute approval and acceptance of who her daughter is and what her daughter can do, and the fact that she did something. Great. I mean, that little line right there says plenty, especially because of what we already saw in the movie. How about the very, very end? Well, maybe not the last frame or two, but the very end when they go to the track meet and Dash is, you know, they're telling Dash to get second place in the 100-meter dash or whatever. You know, he can accept that he can go faster, but he's just going to slow it down, and that's okay. And his family's accepted that, and they've established that earlier. It's just awesome. And by the way, since I just mentioned that scene, I gotta say, one of the funniest parts in that whole movie is the reaction the guy next to them has in the stands, where Mr. Incredible, and I'm like, you know, pull it back, make it close, and the guy's just like, great facial expression, great animation. I just love that scene. It's so good. That's the kind of cleverness, once again, back to the cleverness, that this movie has. It really ties it together very well. I can't even think of a single non-main character, supporting character or antagonist that's not awesome. Frozone, I would consider him not necessarily a main character, but a secondary or supporting character. He's awesome. Everyone loves him. Mirage is a cool character. Syndrome is a cool character. I love the concept because, the movie it has some stereotypes and cliches, you could say, from superhero movies, but it does them so well. The concept of Buddy being Mr. Incredible's #1 fan, turning into Syndrome, your nemesis, that type of thing. Classic. We've seen it before. I'm sure there's lots of movies out there I don't even know about that have used the same concept, and here we have it again. So it's standard in a way, but it does it so well. And they have their own personality, they have their own style in the movie to make it work. So even these things we've seen before, or it could even be predictable, you might even say. I'm sure there was someone out there at one point who said, oh yeah, this #1 fan guy, I bet he's going to be evil in the future. And that's fine if they do, just because when they're right, it's like, well, they're right, and it's awesome anyway. So I love all the characters, love that cleverness. Edna is a fun character too. She's got some good spunk and personality. Just this whole setup is awesome. Just the characters, and it's a character-driven movie. One thing I learned pretty early on in my adventure of movie appreciation, this was years ago, but that stories are better when they're character driven rather when they're story or plot device driven type of thing. In this case, we have Mr. Incredible, who wants to be someone he used to be, or he wants to relive who he used to be. So that's a character driven thing. He's making decisions based on what he wants and how he interacts with the world around him, rather than him responding to, and other characters, rather than the characters responding to what happens in the outside world, that type of thing. So I think this is a character-driven movie in a very good way, and also, I say this a lot, but it knows exactly what it wants to be. I can't think of a single scene in this movie where there's like some awkward moment where it's like, what was the point of that, or why did they have that, or why did this character do this, because that doesn't fit their personality. We see them, it's just a straight shot. We see them where they start, and we see them where they end, and you just know exactly how that happened, when that happened, and you can see it happen too. So it's great. I feel like I'm gushing right now because it's such a fun movie, and I kind of am. But I'll talk about some other finer details of the movie. How about the writing? I think there's a lot of fantastic dialogue and the jokes in this movie. It's so much fun. In class the other day, I was showing my students how to say the word suit in German, and then the first thing that comes out of someone's mouth is, how do you say super suit? And then everyone started saying, where's my super suit? It's such a quotable movie for things like that. And of course, that's one of the classic jokes about it, and that's probably going to be one of my other favorite scenes in the movie. As almost overly goofy it is, just hearing Samuel L. Jackson say, where's my super suit? And his wife off screen, it's even better that she's off screen, saying that thing of like, why do you need to know? It's just so much fun. Everyone loves quoting that scene, and I can't think of a single person who doesn't find that at least fun, if not funny and fun. So the writing, things like that, is excellent. I love the interactions that we have with Frozone and Mr. Incredible, especially even near the beginning of the movie, when they claim they're going bowling. I love the interactions they have right there. It's almost like subtle in a way, or if you're not paying close attention, you might miss a few lines they have. But talking about how in their past, Frozen's saying they're sitting in the car, they're being watched by Mirage, and they're listening to the police scanner, waiting to go save somebody. And he's talking about some villain he used to know in the past. He's got me tied up and this and that. And then he starts monologuing. They're talking about these stereotypes of villains in stories and comics or movies or whatever, where villains will monologue and kind of ruin their plan just because they have to tell you everything that they're planning to do and make themselves seem as evil as possible. So those little lines like that. And then also after they do save those people in that burning building, and they end up in the jewelry shop, and the alarm goes off and everything, I like how they just stand there for a few seconds arguing about, this wasn't part of the plan, and this and that, and then Frozen says, I wanted to go bowling. I love that. They just have their own personality still in them as they're going through these heroic events throughout this, plot point in the story. And it's awesome. And that's one of the first cool, clever moments. This is another great thing about this movie. It's just so much awesomeness here. When Frozone, I'm thirsty, I'm getting a drink of water. I'm glad the police officer he has a gun out, gun drawn, pointing it at Frozone and Mr. Incredible. And Frozone, there's no water in this air, I need water. So he takes a cup of water. I'm glad the police officer wasn't just some pushover police officer. He's like, oh, well, okay, if you say so. I like the way they kept him serious and said, freeze! Still freeze! Whatever. There was no chance that he was going to let up on trying to keep them under control. So it was fair to have a police officer, get frozen or whatever to get out of the situation. But I'm glad the police weren't just portrayed as some loser guys who weren't helpful at all. Because I think that happens often in superhero movies, or just not even superhero movies, all kinds of stories, TV shows and things. The police are often portrayed as just completely useless, and I'm glad it just had that little tint, or the hint of realism in there, to have police, bust in there and say, police officers! And trying to make sure that everything was under control and that they were saving people and everything. I like that detail. And also, I like the cleverness in that scene, or maybe not cleverness is the right word, but just the elements of being a superhero and using that to your advantage, or using that as a part of your life. One of the best parts of the movie is near the end of it, when they're fighting off, they're in the city, the Incredible family and Frozone joins in, when they're in the city and fighting off the evil robot, whatever, the Omnidroid or whatever it's called, that Syndrome built. I love that scene because there's so many pieces of just cool superhero stuff. One that comes to my mind right now is when Mr. Incredible says, honey, take out its gun! He tells Helen, Mrs. Elastigirl. So we had Mrs. Incredible, Elastigirl, and Helen, or whatever, Mrs. Parr, too. Whatever you want to call her, there's the thing where he says, take out her gun. Now, this is a point in the movie that's fast-paced, but when you stop and think about it, what does he want her to do exactly? Take out her gun. That doesn't really mean anything. She doesn't necessarily have an automatic, innate, intrinsic way to take out a gun or whatever. So what she does is something super clever. She sees a manhole cover, so she goes over to it, picks it up, wraps her arm around that pole, and, flings it. That's the kind of stuff right there where it's fast-paced and fun to watch, but also it's just super clever and super smart, and it makes the viewer realize, I think subconsciously, at least for me it was subconscious, maybe other people, it's totally obvious and it's right on the front of their mind, but that's the kind of thing where it helps the viewer appreciate what it's like to be a superhero and what a superhero has to go through to be super. It takes some quick thinking to say, oh gosh, I gotta take out its gun, what do I do? And that's what she does. She looks around for half a second and she comes up with a plan instantly. It's just cool. It makes her seem experienced and smart, and she can handle things just as well as Mr. Incredible can. And that's another great part about this movie. It's not like there's this thing where he's the best and, the wife's trying to catch up, or he thinks he's better than her, or anything like that. Every superhero or every person with powers in this movie that we get to see does their own thing well, and it's just awesome to see, whether they were, already experienced, the parents, so Mrs. Incredible and Mr. Incredible, they know what they're doing from the past, and they could still do it type of thing, and then watching Dash and Violet discover how to be super with your powers, not just to be a person with powers, but how to become a super person with powers and be a superhero. It's just great. I love it. There's a lot of these aspects in this movie really speak to me, and I think they make it entertaining for most of the audience. I've seen very few people, if any, who just don't like this movie. I think I do have a recollection of being shocked that someone said, I don't really care about The Incredible. It seemed dumb, and I was like, really? God, it's fun. I know there's all kinds of superhero things out there, and some stereotypes or cliches or similarities you could see, but this one I do think genuinely is done very well. Some more examples of just the awesome superhero element of the movie being awesome would be things like Frozone near the end of the movie when they're fighting the big robot from Syndrome. When he's got Dash on his back or whatever, and he's trying to get away because Dash has the remote that controls the robot. Just watching, him, he throws his ice whatever things, and he's making the pond in the city, get frozen so they can keep skating across it or whatever, walking across it. And then how the robot shoots the water in the water flies up, and instantly he realizes he can freeze that water to make snow and make a soft place for him and Dash to land on. That's a great example right there of quick thinking and creativity and fun action to watch, where it's not even overdone. I mean, that's just a basic thing, but when you have those great basic things that are leading the viewer through this action sequence, it just is perfect. It's well paced, it's well done. Another scene that was really well done in terms of especially powers and how the characters get through situations, when Helen or Mrs. Incredible or Mrs. Parr or Elastigirl, whatever you want to call her, when she, has found out that Mr. Incredible has been captured by Mirage and Syndrome, and so she infiltrates their base or whatever, and they have those those pod things that run on the tracks and they go really fast. When she's going through that sequence, when she jumps onto one of those and she goes into the base and she turns around and one of those pods is coming right at her and she has to instantly how do I get out of this? There's something coming right at me, full speed. I have less than a second to react. And she flattens herself against the wall to get out of the way. Things like that are awesome. And just, again, still infiltrating that base thing when she's just trying to get around. And there's a lot of doors in that way. There's some hallways and doors. And just the sequence of her getting stuck in the first door with her leg or something, and then she stretches across to try to get to the next door, but then that one closes on her torso, and then she has to stretch forward again, and then her arm gets caught in that elevator, and she's stretched across 4 hallways. It's just fun. I mean, that's the kind of thing that it's interesting for the viewer to watch, whether it's a younger viewer or an older viewer. You can appreciate what's going on in the story, you can appreciate it visually, you can appreciate it for what she's doing, and it's just a blast. And that scene isn't even that long. And that's the best part about the pacing thing. There's no scene that really drags out, and it's just this person doing the same thing over and over, or the same situation that they get out of in the same way. Whoever created the screenplay and did the storyboards for these and said, how are we going to get these characters through these situations and make it entertaining? They did a fantastic job, because it really is just absolutely entertaining. I love scenes that have characters that use their ingenuity to get through something or get to something, especially when they work together. That's also fun to watch. But then also where it's not the same thing every single time. And that's exactly what this was here. So it speaks to me, and I'm hoping it speaks to other people too, at least in a somewhat positive way, because it's awesome. It's fun. Another fun thing that The Incredibles does is the whole no capes thing. It kind of coined the no capes joke, or the reference and quote. And some movies do that. You often have a movie that'll do something, it just has that one thing that works really well for it. Fish are friends, not food. That's one from Finding Dory. I mean, people quote that. They recognize it, they quote it. It's just a thing that's worked its way into movie culture or society dialogue in some cases. So in this case, we have the no capes thing, which is fun. And they even take it almost a step further, you might say, where at the end of the movie, when Syndrome, he has a cape, and he has the Zeppelin, whatever, blimp thing he has above the Incredibles' house, and when Mr. Incredible throws the car up into it, and, he gets sucked back, and he's sort of, trying to, not get sucked into the giant turbine things, and the cape is the one thing that really seems to pull him in, suck him in. That's like the last detail it needed just to keep getting him physics-wise. And so I like how they have that little hint of, no capes, but I'm glad they didn't spell it out. It wasn't like, cape, look at the cape. There were no arrows pointing at it. It didn't focus on it super specifically. It was just saying, no capes. I like the little montage of Edna saying, no capes, this date, this person died, sucked through a jet turbine or whatever. It was fun to watch that, humorously, but then we have a real situation where we're watching someone who we actually don't even like, but almost being like, wow, I wonder if they're almost were going for, we want the viewer to almost sort of hope that he gets away, because that's a pretty intense death, and maybe he's not even dead, because you never know with movies these days. But I do like the whole coinage of no capes, and then it comes back a little bit at the end just to send our antagonist off with a kind of ironic, kind of relatable at this point way, just because of what we've seen in the movie. I don't think there's anything else I want to say about The Incredibles 1 for now. I think I hit all the points that just come to mind when I think about the movie, all the things I want to think about. And again, if I don't address something that you want addressed, or you want me to address something further, or you want to challenge a point, feel free to make a comment, or send messages, or email. But I do want to talk about Incredibles 2 a little bit, and I'm actually going to... I saw the trailer once. There was a 30-second trailer with Jack, and there was a longer trailer that came out. I saw both of those once, and that was literally it once, and that was multiple months ago for both of them. I'm going to grab this electronic brick, and I'm going to watch the trailer again, and then just see see how I'm feeling after I watch it again before I say anything else, because I don't want to get anything wrong or forget about something that I might have felt before when watching it. But before I say anything else, one moment. I just watched the trailer. I did chuckle a couple times. At the ending specifically, just the last couple seconds is Frozone and his wife communicating again. But that's almost the type of stuff that I do worry about these days for sequels like this. And we've had so many other long-time sequels, Finding Dory after so long, Star Wars after so long, Terminator after so long, Incredibles after so long, Toy Story after so long. But I really hope that they're not just doing things just because they know the audience and they know society is waiting for that to happen. They want to see Frozone and his wife again. I mean, yes, we do, but is that really the best way to make the movie? I like the concept of since the events in the first Incredibles movie happened, that the government or whoever, the superhero detection agency or whatever, that they want to bring superheroes back in the light and give them a good positive image. Like, that's a cool concept, and that's kind of what the viewer would want, I guess. I mean, you wouldn't want too many movies in a row of we have to stay in hiding and yeah, we did this great thing, but here we are back to square one, or we can't reveal ourselves or can't do what we want to do. That's happened in movies before. Remember, like, Ghostbusters 2 or like Jurassic Park 3? Like, there's Laura Dern's character in Jurassic Park 1 and Sam Neill's character, and they're a fine couple or whatever, and then by Jurassic Park 3 they're like broken up, and it's like, oh, okay. I mean, why would you do that? So that does happen sometimes. There was this weird pattern for a while. These are older movies too now. But there's this weird pattern that we've seen where characters just kind of go through all this stuff, and then in the next movie they just are back where they were, and we have the same, at least some of the same plot points or things to worry about. And that's not going to happen here. At least judging by the trailer, we are not going to see the Incredible family having to be like, I want to be super and someone, but I'm not allowed to be. That's saying that everyone's special is just like saying no one's special, which is a great quote, by the way. That's not going to be the case here. So great for that. It's funny that I mentioned earlier how I was glad in the first movie that Mr. Incredible isn't trying to be better than Mrs. Incredible, and then in this trailer there was that thing where there's that agent guy, whoever he is, saying that we need to bring the superheroes back and put them in the right light, and you, Mrs. Incredible, are the best person to do that. And he's like, not me. I really hope they don't overdo the whole, wait, you're setting her and you're giving her the job and her the mission and not me. I really hope they don't overuse that, because it's not really that clever, and it's just going to hold us back from the other incredible things that could happen in this Incredibles 2 movie, which it seems like there are going to be some pretty cool, incredible scenes and some fun action and such, but if they get too bogged down on that, or get too bogged down on Mr. Incredible's trying to be the stay-at-home dad and he's having trouble with that, it's like, well, never seen a movie with a guy trying to be a dad before and having trouble with it, so I guess this will be super unique and fun. I kind of come with that sarcastic attitude of, alright, fine, if you're going to do it that way, you better do it darn well, because this is not the place or the time, or at least the tone of the movie that's going to be good for following up Incredibles 1. If that makes sense. It seems like an abstract way to describe that. But that's just one thing I felt about watching that trailer. There's not really much else I can say about the trailer. I mean, it's like 2 minutes of footage from the movie, so I don't have a lot to go on going into Incredibles 2, other than just wanting to watch it, get excited, have any, point any thoughts that do come to my mind, which I did a couple things for. But in regards to the last thing I would say regarding sequel and such is the ending of the first movie. We have this like soft cliffhanger or whatever. This underminer guy, and he comes out, I like his line of saying, I may be beneath you, but nothing is beneath me. Like, that's it's just like, that's a classic villain, right? Like, a villain has a thing they say and a thing that they foundationally work with to be who they are, which is fun, so it's kind of cool. And having conversations with people and seeing conversations online or just watching reviews and such, it's amazing to me how much everyone seems to assume, and maybe they know something I don't, but so many people seem to assume that the next movie is going to begin right at that point. And, here we are 14 years later, and it's going to be 14 seconds later in the movie when we see The Incredibles 2 start. And I don't know if it's because people want it to start there, Because, again, we have this nostalgia for appreciating the original movies we have here. And I really don't know if it's because people want that to happen, because it's like, yeah, Incredibles 1, back to my childhood, or back to this, and back to that thing I love so much, and here we go, right off the bat. Or if it's because they think it has to happen, because you can have movies with cliffhangers that don't really need to go anywhere. I mean, that's why I called it a soft cliffhanger. We don't need to see, I have a good example here, we don't need to see The Incredibles 2 start where Incredibles 1 left off to let Incredibles 2 happen. All we needed at the end of Incredibles 1 was for them to just end on a positive note. They're together as a family. Dash is doing his thing. Violet's going to hang out with this boy. I wonder if he's going to be in the next movie. It's just like, yeah, we got this. Here's where we are now. We're ending on this positive note. And just because we have a cliffhanger thing, antagonist come out, doesn't mean we have to see the entire sequence and plot line of that, going to full fruition and having a climax and having a resolution. All we needed to see, really, was just them knowing where they are, and seeing the Underminer guy was like the trigger for us to see what was going on. Because, yeah, they're like a track meet or whatever. Nothing serious was happening, so that didn't really tell us everything yet. What really told us where they were was seeing someone who's a new threat coming out for them to reveal who they really are now as a team or whatever. So I don't know how I feel about that. Like, do I want this to start with the Underminer in the second one? I'm okay with it happening, but it was such an odd thing that I never expected that. When seeing Incredibles 1, I never thought, like, oh, Incredibles 2, it's coming out now? Oh, they're going to start with the Underminer, because that's obviously, right? It seems so obvious to other people, but to me, it was like, wait, oh, they are? Oh. They can, I guess. That's kind of my reaction to it. The other example I was thinking of, which is like less of a soft cliffhanger, is the terrible movie Mortal Kombat. And if you've never seen Mortal Kombat and you want to appreciate how dumb it is, go watch the Nostalgia Critics review, because of the first one, Mortal Kombat, and Mortal Kombat Annihilation, he does a fantastic job breaking down how those movies are awful. But in the beginning, or in the first movie, at the end of Mortal Kombat 1, it's not like a soft cliffhanger at all. It's like, whoa, like, threat, cliffhanger kind of thing. And it's like, this has to be dealt with. That's the kind of cliffhanger that does have to be dealt with in the next movie, because it's just a different context. When you're a superhero, you get all kinds of villains out there that you run into, and all kinds of threats that are threatening the city and that you respond to, and not every single one of those has to be a movie itself, or has to start a movie. So in terms of Mortal Kombat, we have this evil emperor guy, or whatever. I'm spoiling the movie now, by the way, but there's this evil emperor guy where he's like, you guys thought you were safe, and you thought the world was saved, or whatever, but you're really not. And like, that's the whole point of Mortal Kombat, is to save the world by not letting the Outworld or whatever win the 10th championship of Mortal Kombat, or like whatever the heck it is. So that's a cliffhanger that does need to be responded to in the second movie, which, as horrible as it is, and Incredibles 2, it doesn't have to be that way. So I'm just pointing that out. Maybe you disagree, and that's okay. I don't think it's a bad thing to want the Underminer to be this huge thing in the next movie, but it really doesn't have to be, and not nearly to the degree that I've seen people expect it to be. If I had seen, like, Star Wars, Rogue One, a Star Wars story, if I had seen that movie, if I had seen Star Wars Episode 8, if I had seen Jurassic World, if I had seen, Terminator 5, wow, couldn't think of that one. Terminator 5, and just all these, again, remade movies or sequel movies, and I come out of each of them being like, wow, that was exactly what they needed to do. That's the sequel we needed. That's the sequel we wanted. That's everything we needed. If I had come out of all of those saying that, then I wouldn't feel so nervous about the ones coming ahead, like Incredibles 2 and the Han Solo Star Wars movie coming up that's even sooner. Man, the Han Solo movie is coming out a week from yesterday. So that's another one where in the past, I would have been super psyched to know there was another Star Wars movie that was Han Solo based, but after what we've been through in the past few years, it's kind of like, I hope it's good, because I don't know if it's going to be. But, of course, that's just my opinion, and everyone out there is going to have a different opinion. There's going to be some people who say The Incredibles 2 is much better than Incredibles 1. There's going to be some people out there who say the Han Solo movie is going to be the best Star Wars movie ever made, and there's going to be some out there who say Star Wars Han Solo is going to be the worst Star Wars movie ever. I mean, you're going to get everything no matter what anyway, so does it even matter if a movie's good or not, because it's going to be interpreted as good or not depending on whatever it is anyway? Maybe I'm just confusing myself at this point. I'm going to see Incredibles 2. I'm going to go in there full force, excited, with the good fond memories I have of the first one, and I'm going to try to enjoy it as much as I possibly can. And you can bet I'll be doing a review on it as soon as I can after I see the movie, so be ready for that one. But I guess, because I just thought about it right now, be ready for a Han Solo Star Wars movie, whatever it's called, trailer, movie review next week, because that is coming right out here soon. That'll be the next thing. I also have some other things in the works, but thanks for watching my review / excitement video for The Incredibles 2. If you haven't ever subscribed to the channel before, I hope you would consider it. It's okay if you don't. I'm just glad that you're here to watch anyway. But if you do want to see other things that we have coming up, things that are cooking in the kettle, and you want to see more, get notified when those happen, please feel free to subscribe. That would be awesome.